Claude Code is better at n8n than I am, but that's not why I use it. Most people treat Claude Code as a faster way to build workflows. I treat it as a co-pilot who handles the decisions I shouldn't automate. Most people try to automate everything with n8n. That is a trap. I run a hybrid stack. n8n handles the repetitive work while I sleep. Claude Code handles the judgment calls that require context. IGDMs that could be spam or real leads. n8n might not be able to tell the difference, but I can. And that's with Claude Code. Here's a 3-step system breakdown of what hybrid actually looks like. Here's some workflows that I run that are autonomous. I call these IG sniper, maybe lead capturing, maybe data sourcing. But with Claude Code, here's some that require judgment calls, but you can still run it. I have a script enhancer. So let's say I have a YouTube script. I drop it in Claude Code. It enhances it. Maybe we go back and forth. Something makes sense, something doesn't. Maybe the hook isn't strong, and that requires my manual input. You don't have to choose between both. There's certain instances where you could use one or the other, and then there's certain instances where you can combine both. So let me show you what actually hybrid means. You could have an n8 trigger that routes to Claude Code. So I have a workflow that runs and generates a script with n8n automatically. Sometimes it's a banger, a lot of times it's not. Just because it's really hard to nail everything perfectly, it's going to require some manual edit, so I do that anyways. But sometimes I just take that and I pass it to Claude Code, and Claude just uses its skill and helps me edit that. So that's an example that I'm going to dive into in a bit. In the past, when I first started with n8n, I first started learning it, my goal was to automate everything. I thought I could just have automation for everything and that my job will become easier. I didn't realize that came with a lot of baggage, that some processes require my decisions, and to just try to automate everything becomes too complex because there's so many variables that some things just require your manual input. It's just easier because at the end of the day, it's still going to save you time. You're just going to have to do more reviewing versus doing everything from scratch. In this case, you have, let's say you had a DM from a social media platform. You don't want to automate that. In some cases, you may. It just depends on the type of DM. But the point is, it varies for everybody and it varies per task. But the thing is, for lead capturing, maybe data sourcing, like just raw data processing, some of that stuff is just to automate. It's very easy and straightforward. Some of it is a gray area and it's just personal preference. So maybe you don't want your tweets to go out without you approving them. And you probably shouldn't if you're running your personal brand. But the point is that it requires judgment call. It's not just automate and spit out the first thing. You need a hybrid model as well. That's what I have. So you have n8n that runs, it generates a script, for example. I then take that script, I feed it to Claude Code, I review it, or just review it manually. In this case, I'm using both Claude Code and n8n, but you could just have a human input in the loop and call it a day. That could be your hybrid model. Let me actually show you real systems that I use, some that are pure n8n, some that are pure Claude Code, and some that are just hybrid. So let's start with the boring stuff, the one that runs while I sleep. This is a workflow that scrapes news, and here it's just triggered automatically. As you can see, scrapes perplexity, cleans up the data, feeds it to the AI agent who then reviews that data, decides what news is relevant for me, spits it back out in an organized way, and then dumps that into Notion. So even that's not perfect, but I'm okay with that because most of the time it's low friction. I just take what I want and remove what I don't. So here's another workflow that just runs autonomously, fully automated. It runs by scraping Instagram, takes the top post, only the outlier ones, checks for any duplicates, and then feeds that to Open Whisper to transcribe. Basically feeds it to an AI agent to analyze, and then does research and feeds it to a YouTube script. Ultimately, what that means is that I study my top competitors, I transcribe their content, and analyze gaps, feed it to my AI agent who generates a script in my voice, and all I get on a Wednesday is I wake up into my content hub and all my ideas and scripts are ready. I just got to review it, make sure the topic makes sense, make sure the script makes sense. There's a lot of moving variables, and this is where hybrid comes into play. This is hybrid because I go in there and I review. I have to review the topics and decide, do I want to use them or not? And if I don't use them, I have to either decide, are they so bad that I can't use them at all, or am I going to use Claude Code? And just to give you some context, if I was to use Claude Code, I just basically take the script, I type in the / command, I type in script enhancer, press tab, and I just dump my script here. Just like that, press enter. Claude is then going to give me some context or tips, whether my hook is weak, whether this needs to be edited, spits out a better version. I may agree or disagree with it, and I just move on with my day. And that's pretty much the whole process. But just to give you some context, typically by the time it gets to this point, we have 10 transcripts ready. Out of those 10, After AI analyzes, chooses the right ones that are relevant, and filtering happens downstream up here, I end up with anywhere between 3 to 7 scripts. And so I wake up, look at my content hub, and start deciding, open each tab, open the script basically here, and review it. Does it make sense? Do I want to use it? And just choose pretty much. But let me show you ones that maybe should not be automated. So you could have an agent. You don't even need a Claude Code agent to do this for you. You could automate an n8n fully, and you could have another agent review the script. But the problem is, by the time you get it, you may either burn more tokens because AI just doesn't choose the right one, or you just get a script that's not going to be ready and you're back to square one. You have to start from scratch. So no matter what, that's when a human in the loop makes sense, because ultimately you know your brand best, you know how you're going to execute, you know what sounds like you. And as much as AI is getting smarter, it's just not at the point where it just knows you so well that everything is going to be perfect. We're at the point, at least I'm at the point where I'd say 40-50% of my scripts that are generated, they're not even 100%, but they're like 80-90%. And I just make minor tweaks and I'm good to go. And that saves me a lot of time, because in the past I would spend maybe 15 to 30 minutes per script just figuring it out what I'm going to talk about. And that's just for shorts. So it just depends on the personal preference. But the more personalized it is, the harder it is for AI to know, or the harder it is for AI to fully automate for you. I'm going to type in script enhancer. I'm going to drop a random script. It's a sample script. I'm going to press enter, and I'm going to watch this agent run. So this is a workflow. I think this is using an AI agent to enhance it. It may use it as a skill. In this case, it's looking at my voice profile, how I talk, is looking at templates. And so here you go. So it tells me quickly the good and the bad. And so it gives me the final script. Now, my job at that point is just to read and make sure I agree. I'm just making minor tweaks, but it breaks down why it needs improvements. But that's personally why I wouldn't fully automate this yet, and maybe why you shouldn't either. And just to give you some context, if you've never used n8n, you could achieve something pretty close, because I have a script agent that understands my voice and understands that maybe has examples to pull from. But when you think about it, you have to feed it context, which context equates to tokens, which means it's expensive. So when you're just using n8n, you're hitting API calls, which is different from my Claude subscription. The perks of using a system in Claude Code is that it can read files faster. It can take more context a lot easier, and is more like less hand-holding. So I'm not saying that the quality is significantly better than an AI agent in n8n. It is slightly better in many cases. It just requires more logic and more testing and more trial and error. But for many cases like scripts, I just haven't figured out how to nail it 100%. There's just so many variables that it's really challenging to train an AI agent to do that every single run. Here's where something is automatable, but requires a hybrid approach. This workflow takes in a script, right? It gets triggered on n8n on the content hub, which is this right here. And then once it's triggered, it takes in the script and uses that script to repurpose the content. So it generates assets for LinkedIn, YouTube, TikTok, X, LinkedIn, and then combines all of that and just dumps it back into Notion. And then my job then is hybrid. I got to go in there and I got to review it. I will paste my LinkedIn post. It will spit out comments, feedback, and then I would just paste it back. Obviously, I got to do the manual edit. I still got to review the output. Once I figure out what works, I just update the agents so they get better themselves. And that's pretty much the process. At least I've seen these posts get a little bit better versus the initial versions that I've had. Or taking one single script and you just repurpose it, having the agents do the grunt work, get the first draft going, and then you do the edits with Claude Code or manual edits yourself, because at that point it's just less work. You're not starting from zero. Here's a simple diagram but if it requires judgment, it's going to potentially be manual editing. So you can use Claude Code. You can replace that with yourself. You can replace that with some other process that just basically you got to take a step back and do some manual editing and review. If it doesn't require manual judgments, then is the output predictable? If it is, then it's perfect for n8n. You can just repeat it nonstop. If the output is not predictable, then you may want to use both, right? The point is you're going to have a combination of n8n and a manual review. Here's the shift. You got to stop asking, how do I automate this? Start asking, what part of this is judgment versus repetitive? Additionally, I did put together prompts that I've collected and that I actually use, including ones that power some of these systems. Links in the description if you are interested. And subscribe if you want more breakdowns of what I'm actually running, not just what's theoretically possible. I'll see you on the next one.